Hello, welcome to You Have My Attention. I want to wish everyone a happy new year. I hope everyone's year is off to a good start. I'm flying solo again, so I expect this episode to be on the shorter side this week. So starting with the first topic that has my attention this week, it's something that has been quite recent to me. So lately I've taken notice of a YouTube channel where there's a former architect and he provides interior design recommendations based on Feng Shui. So far, I've enjoyed his series of short videos in which he typically will go and rearrange people's furniture using 3D models in a way that is the most functional and comfortable, while also providing ways to follow the rules of Feng Shui. I enjoy how he kind of peppers his own humor and commentary while demonstrating his suggestions, and his videos have led me to kind of take those types of guidelines more seriously and appreciate the concepts he applies. I myself have actually implemented his recommendations into my own bedroom. So I arranged my bedroom furniture a few days ago, and so far I'm pleased with the results. I think the way that I had my room arranged before this wasn't terrible per se, but it definitely could have used some improvements. Now, since I'm new to the whole Feng Shui concept, I have to mention that I'm no expert. I don't really know what I'm talking about. But to make it easy for me, what I first did was try to understand how to place my bed properly. I think that was the first step. And once I kind of understood the basic rules around that, it was pretty easy to arrange the rest of my furniture. Now, I have to admit that my new bed placement makes my room feel more comfortable. And so far, I think it might even be helping me get better sleep. But I have to say, I'm not entirely sure about that because I've found myself falling asleep faster in the days since I've moved my bed, but it could be related to other reasons, like maybe being busy or these past few days and more like physically active due to some activities, some things I've been doing around the house and such. So that may be the reason, more of the reason why, but as I learn more about this concept, I do plan to make some adjustments, but I mainly intend to use it as more of a guideline rather than a hard rule book. I think that for now, I'll just have to make note of how I feel about my new bedroom arrangement in the coming months. I tend to try to switch things up every few times per year. I don't know how many people are guilty of this. It's just being kind of bored with how their room is arranged and then just somewhat impulsively arranging it. Is that me? I don't know how common that is. But if I do really end up liking it, and maybe I'll make it more permanent arrangement. I mean, that would be nice to not have to be like every 3 or 4 months just deciding to, scratch everything and like just start over and just move everything and rearrange everything to try to find a way to make the room feel more spacious and more, practical and easy to maneuver around. So we'll see how that goes. I'll link his channel information below in case anyone's interested in checking it out. I think it's fun. I really enjoy it, and I recommend it for those of you out there that have been kind of like looking for guidance on how to kind of spruce up a space or, arrange things in a more comfortable and pleasant way. Now, something else that has my attention this week is kind of a topic that I normally don't pay much attention to normally. It's a developing story, and it's around what happened to Damar Hamlin during the first quarter of the Buffalo Bills versus Cincinnati Bengals game on Monday night this week. Now, Hamlin plays safety for the Buffalo Bills. Don't ask me what that means. I don't know much about that position, frankly. But what I do know is that he collapsed after tackling a Bengals wide receiver called T. Higgins. Unfortunately, shortly after this tackle, Hamlin suffered a cardiac arrest and he received immediate medical attention and was taken to the hospital. Now, as you can probably guess, I don't know a lot about football. I don't watch it very often. And I have to be honest and say it's not one of my favorite sports to watch. I'm honestly more of a basketball fan. Although I did attend a high school that was really big on football, and I really enjoyed playing in the marching band during football season. Throughout my time in high school, I have to say that I'm not one to have a soft spot for the sport. Just to kind of place some context for all of my thoughts. Now, I recall that in my time in high school, there was a physics teacher there at the time that taught advanced physics classes. He wasn't my teacher, but he was, by some students, kind of described as somewhat odd, eccentric, and in some ways he was kind of a polarizing teacher, because I know some students really enjoyed his teaching methods and others really didn't like it, and they didn't like his personality either. So I heard like both praises and complaints about him. One thing I remember was that he was strongly against high school students playing football. Now, his reasoning was that he had many students over the years that had played on the school's team, and apparently, according to him, they had suffered from head injuries, including concussions, and these resulted in a noticeable difference in their students' behavior and academic performance, according to him. I don't have any data or information on this. It seems to be mostly based on anecdotal evidence. But I mean, some of it seems reasonable to me. I mean, one would think that if a student were to suffer a concussion, it would be understandable that there would be some effects that would happen as a result. So he believed that the only way to prevent these kinds of effects from happening was to stop offering football as a sport at the high school level. And I mean, obviously this wasn't an opinion that was heard, and the school district made no changes to the sport offerings despite his objections or his opinions. And as I understand, that teacher retired after my junior year. And I think this was shortly around the time that I decided I wouldn't be taking a second level of physics. But anyway, my point is that this incident kind of definitely needs further investigation before a prevention option is presented. Currently, most reports seem to mention that this incident is rare and is also rare not only to football but also to the world of professional sports. So I think it remains to be seen what additional information will be uncovered surrounding this incident. But for the time being, I want to mention that I'm hoping for Hamlin's speedy recovery. And I'm also hoping that if it turns out that this incident is due to the dangers of football, hopefully it leads to some rule changes that can help increase the safety of the sport. For the time being, I don't foresee this incident leading to a decline in football's popularity. I think that in order to see something like that happening, there would have to be multiple instances of similar incidences, along with findings that the sport itself is strongly tied to these types of effects on players. And it is my understanding that rules enforced by the NFL, along with advancements in sports medicine and equipment innovation, have led to an increase in player safety. I recently read an article published by the Associated Press where a few football fans were interviewed and asked their thoughts on the incident. They shared their thoughts, and a few expressed that their feelings about football have changed as they have learned about the connection between football and brain injuries. I recall one individual mentioning that they had grown up watching football, saying that they don't watch it anymore for those reasons, over over time they had felt that they could not support the sport anymore. Now, there are others in the article that were interviewed tried to remain hopeful while still expressing how much they love the sport, how much they love football. I personally found it surprising that one of the people being interviewed was saying that they felt 8 years old was an appropriate age for kids to become involved in tackle football. Now, personally, when considering the physical toll that tackles place on players' bodies, I think it makes more sense to consider that 8 is too young. But since I'm no expert, I have to say that I shouldn't be one to suggest a better age. But that being said, I'm not sure an ideal age exists. When it comes to something like sports, where spectators become so emotionally invested in their favorite team's performance, and definitely very invested in the excitement of the moment during a nail-biting match, it's just difficult to convince fans that their favorite sport might have a serious problem. If this incident ends up pointing to a serious problem, I think it's in the best interest of everyone. So basically the team, the fans, and most importantly the players, to make changes to increase safety. I don't know if this points to a serious problem, but if it does, that's what needs to be done. So basically, I'm just going to continue to follow this story for the time being. I'm interested to see how it plays out and what new information comes out about the incident and whether or not it leads to changes to the sport, especially if there is a link that is found between the two. So now moving on to my next topic that has my attention. I kind of had a thought recently about at the end of the holiday season and, wrapping that time of the year, and how this next part of the year leading into spring kind of has a sort of energy or like transition that is different than that of the holidays. It kind of lies in stark contrast to it. So the thought came to my mind that it can be really easy to kind of get stuck in a rut. Basically what that means is like finding yourself in a situation where you're just in a routine and it's just mundane. It's a kind of situation or behavior that doesn't change. And it can get boring, of course. So I came up with a few things that I have found to help me when I find myself in this kind of headspace. So the first of these is that I change my routine. So I try to do something new, something that's out of the ordinary, even if it's very slight. So it doesn't have to cost any money. It doesn't have to take even more than 5 minutes out of my regular day. So whatever this change to routine that I pick, it can be something simple, like trying a new type of tea, or maybe even styling my hair differently that day. I think it's important to remember that sometimes a small change can make a good positive difference in your day. The next thing I do sometimes is that I try to find a way to change my environment. So I will do something to freshen up my surroundings. It can be as simple as cleaning a box of clutter that I have lying around, or as laborious and sometimes frustrating or even intensive as rearranging my room. Hopefully I do less of that these days, and now that I've found an arrangement I think is more suitable and comfortable, and that seems to work for me. Now, the third one that I like to do, and I think this is the most powerful thing that one can do when finding yourself in a mundane, kind of a bored headspace, is to change my thinking. So this is definitely easier said than done for sure. I try to find a way to face my negative thoughts head on if I find myself in this headspace and I have a lot of negative thoughts floating around. There are a few ways people can do this. One way you can do it is by writing down a positive thought to challenge the negative thoughts in your head. You can just start with one negative thought. It's probably easier to do it that way. It's best to think about how to build your argument against this negative thought that is kind of affecting your headspace. So kind of think about the way you're going to build your argument, and if it helps to write down these counter arguments down as well, kind of surround it around your positive thought that is going to counteract your negative thought. I think it really helps to have examples that go against your negative thought to help you prove it wrong and show to yourself why it's illogical or why it's nonsensical or even why that negative thought can't work for you. So I think it's important to stop for a moment and take a few deep breaths. Then think about that positive thought that you are going to use to counteract your negative thought and repeat it to yourself. And then let it sit for a bit in your mind. Then what you do is you go and distract yourself with something else for a few hours. Keep yourself busy, do something, get your mind off it, don't think about it too much for a while. Now you come back to the positive thought. You let it simmer in your mind for a little bit. And this is when you're taking a break. This is when you're doing, taking some time in your day to separate from your busy tasks. You keep it to yourself. You keep this thought simmering and you busy yourself, or if it's the end of the day, then you just go to sleep, get ready for bed and kind of don't think about it too much again. Over time, as you repeat this can help dissolve the negative thought you had. I know some people like to use a different technique that's called the mirror technique, where you say positive reaffirmations to yourself while looking in a mirror. Sometimes the only person we listen to is ourselves. And this is why it's important for you to believe positive things about yourself, because letting yourself just continuously run in a cycle of negativity can lead to a lot of problems. So if you find yourself in this kind of cycle where you're just running in cycles of negativity, my suggestion is try one of these tactics and reach out to someone you trust, ask for help, and remember to be kind to yourself. We can definitely be our own worst enemies sometimes. We can be harsh on ourselves, so much so that we might not realize how much we're doing it. So always remember that it's okay to have bad days, but don't let a bad situation or a bad day, take over and push you down a hill. And always remember that it's okay to ask for help. And so with that, I just want to give a quick update on my New Year's resolutions before I end. I know that it's common for New Year's resolutions to be abandoned before the end of January. I think I've definitely been guilty of doing that. I hope to not end up doing that this year with my resolutions. But I did notice that since posting the previous episode where Carla joined the podcast, I provided some tips on how to keep your New Year's resolutions. I found myself making a few adjustments to my own resolutions. Now, so far I haven't removed any, but I have reframed my resolution around fitness to make it more about endurance rather than muscle mass. I remember mentioning that I was trying to make a goal about increasing muscle mass by a certain percentage, and I didn't even know what percentage to list. So then I thought about it and I realized that just focusing instead on endurance would be a better route for me. So I kind of want to see if I can build my way to doing 10 push-ups with ease by the end of the year. I want to make it to where it's not a struggle to get there. I know I can do it now, but I would definitely struggle trying to do it. I'm going to see if I can get myself to where I don't need a struggle, where it's kind of an easy task, or at least easier. We'll start there. Another thing I realized in the previous episode was that I kept mentioning the example of how I want to go to bed a certain time, and I think the time I gave was unreasonable. It was like midnight, go to bed by midnight 70% of the time. The 70% is not unreasonable, I think, but the midnight part, I think if I want to change my sleeping schedule for the better, midnight is too late if I want to get up at a good time in order to, make my day work well and get enough sleep. So I think I'm changing that time for sure, since midnight is too late. I'm definitely going to say that it's important to plan your bedtime based on your desired wake up time. So make sure to allow yourself enough time to get your 8 hours, as well as a bit of a buffer. And no one really thinks about the buffer. I don't hear mentioning of that so much. You want to make sure you can ease yourself into the day in the morning. I know that for me personally, I need downtime before bed. So I need to ease myself into my bedtime. So I need to have a buffer for that. And I need some time to reflect and prepare in the morning before I get up and get ready for the day. So I have to incorporate that into my bedtime as well. So that midnight sleep time is going to change for sure, because that would not be the best case for me. And so that's kind of a little reminder. If you find yourself, trying to hit your resolution goals and you find that it doesn't work, maybe you just need to change it or reframe it, because it's not always the right goal for you, or you just need to make some adjustments so that it makes sense. So with that, I leave you with a few things to think about for the week. Let me know what has your attention this week, and let me know whether you agree on my takes on the topics that I presented in this episode. I hope you all have a fantastic week. Thanks for listening. Bye.